Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. I am here at the trial of Natalie Cochran in West Virginia. Today at trial, a witness dropped an absolute bombshell. Did Natalie try to poison her husband Michael twice? And a witness showed us 3 vials of medications. And it turns out one vial was labeled one thing, but the medications inside were actually something completely different. So we're going to be talking about both of those things today. Plus, at the end, I'm going to show you some gorgeous scenery from here in West Virginia that I think you'll love seeing. It's an absolutely beautiful state. So Natalie Cochran, as those of you who have been following along know, is accused of murdering her husband. She was a pharmacist, but she has now pled guilty and is serving 11 years and 3 months of a sentence in federal prison for a Ponzi scheme. The scheme ripped off her in-laws, brother, her friends, family, acquaintances. And she's accused of taking a total of $2.5 million through that. She's also accused of a host of other various offenses, ranging from stealing $10,000 from the local Little League to faking cancer. Those aren't at issue in this case other than as motive. The cancer is a bit at issue in terms of her credibility, but the $10,000 from the local Little League is not. And the Ponzi scheme is not technically at issue. She's already been convicted of that. Prosecutors say in this case that she gave her husband insulin, that she watched as he lay on the couch all day, unresponsive, with dangerously low sugar levels, and she knew just why they were so low, that multiple people tried to get her to take him to the hospital, and she refused. By the end of the day, when she took him, it was too late. He could not be resuscitated. He died in hospice 5 days later. The prosecutors say she wanted him dead because he either had just learned about or was about to learn about the Ponzi scheme she had been running, and that she was worried he would either stop her or turn her in. Now, the defense says this is all nonsense. Michael was a very sick man. He had been hospitalized more than once with very similar issues, and they were all of his own making. The problem was that he was taking foreign-made supplements and steroids that he ordered off the internet, and the reason was he was trying to bulk up. He was trying to be a bodybuilder or to do bodybuilding. So he was taking all of these things that were harming his body. They say he knew all about that Ponzi scheme. He was already heavily involved. There'd be no motive to kill him because of that Ponzi scheme. So those are the overall allegations in the case. And now we are going to dive into what happened today. I want to give a shout out to the first 5 in the chat tonight. Michael, Go Duke Basketball, Curly Crew Mom, Teresa, and Coles. Special shout out and hi to all of you. I also want to say a special shout out to Jessica from WVNS, local news station, and to Mom Rita, who's a longtime subscriber here on the channel. So it's a special. I also want to just throw in, and I'll tell you more about it later. We are going to be having a special members only event on Sunday night. I'll tell you more about that at the end. All right, so let's start out with witness number 1, Jason Bowen. Jason was there the day that Michael fell out. Now, 5 days later, Michael was going to die in hospice without ever waking up. And Jason was there at the beginning of this episode, at least so far as we know and understand it. Jason was a general contractor who did all aspects of construction. And he said he does traveling construction in various places. In 2019, his business partner, Jonathan Miller, and he were working full-time for Mr. and Mrs. Cochran, for Natalie and for her husband, Michael, doing various projects. And they had their own companies, but had joined forces together and were working together on this project for various projects for the Cochrans. Now, on March 30th of 2020, Jonathan, the business partner, died in a motor vehicle accident. So the only person of the two who can talk about what happened is Jason, who is here today and talked about what happened on February 6th, 2019. Jason and his business partner, Jonathan Miller, had just left Lowe's. It was about 12:20. They didn't say, but I'm pretty sure that would be PM, just afternoon. I mean, that would make more sense. They having just left Lowe's as they did, when they got a text from Natalie. And Natalie said Mike had gotten sick and was just had fallen out on the kitchen floor. And she wanted them to come and help her. So Jason and Jonathan headed straight to the Cochran's house and got there about 12:30, 12:40. The prosecution has repeatedly shown a photograph that Natalie herself took of Michael lying in a heap on the kitchen floor. Jason said when he got there, yep, the picture is pretty much what he saw, pretty much accurate, that Michael was just lying there. Natalie told him Michael had gotten sick and lowered himself to the floor using the cabinets. So far as Jason knew, he didn't hit his head. Natalie asked him to move Michael to the couch. They did that. They tried to talk to Michael and they said his name. They got no response. They felt like, Jason said he felt like he needed to be checked out because he just was not responsive. He said Jonathan did a sternum rub on him. He said, if you're lucid, you're going to come up out of your sleep or whatever is happening with a sternum rub. But Michael didn't do that. He didn't arouse. He didn't converse. He didn't say anything or move. So Jason and Jonathan said they were only there about 20 minutes. And it was about 5 minutes after they got there and after they had already moved Michael to the couch that Trooper John Hamilton came by. He was a friend of the Cochrans. He testified at trial earlier. We talked about his testimony earlier. Now, Jason and Jonathan texted back and forth with Natalie that afternoon. She told them all afternoon, well, he's sleeping it off. There's no change. Right at the end of his testimony, the state did thoroughly confuse me on one issue. Jason apparently says that before Michael had gotten sick, the Cochrans had mentioned having plans to go to Virginia that day. Now that fits with some other testimony we've heard in the case because we heard from a private banker for Bank of America who said he was supposed to meet with the Cochrans that day with Natalie and Michael about maybe starting a business relationship or private banking for high net worth individuals. But apparently in an interview closer to the time of these events, Jason said something pretty different. What he said was that Natalie told him Michael had been planning on hanging out with Jonathan and Jason that day. Apparently Jonathan and Jason were building a hangar and Michael was going to come help hang out with them while they did that or maybe help them do it. And the state left it at, that's quite different, isn't it? Which it clearly is, but I just was confused about why that matters. I wasn't really clear about why we were learning about that. So that may be something we'll watch for future trial days and see what happened. Now, cross-examination cross-examination went next. Of course it would. And talked about the week before Jason got sick. And they were trying to the week before Michael got sick, they were trying to get the witness, Jason, to say that there had been other signs that Michael was sick that week. We heard from Natalie at the sentencing in her federal case that he had been sick. We understand that the prosecution believes that he had been sick for a substantial period of time leading up to this, meaning several days, that he had had worsening episodes. We heard that maybe he had confusion while he was out shopping with Jason and his business partner, Jonathan, and maybe they were out. He couldn't remember who drove or where they had parked and just got a little confused. Although, if remembering where you parked is the sign, then I am not doing particularly well either. I never remember where I parked. So the defense really tried to get him to talk about that incident, but it ended up just being kind of muddled about when it happened. It may have been earlier. It may not have been directly connected to this particular incident. So that was when it happened. And the witness dropped an absolute bombshell right in the middle of the trial day. The defense says Michael was hospitalized, several times during that year before February 6, 2019, the day he was found on the kitchen floor, and when 5 days later he passed away. Now, the dates got all kind of jumbled up on the cross of this witness, and Jason said that back in November, Michael had gotten into black mold and complained of dizziness, and that was probably what led to his November illness. It was a little unclear. After that, he kept complaining of feeling sick, said Jason. Jason said he doesn't really know if it was in January or February, though. It might have been more December. So he wasn't really clear that it was connected. Then there was a question about whether in February, Michael said he felt another episode coming on. And Jason said, no, I don't really recall that. And then said, Michael said he felt like he had been poisoned. Now, of course, when something like that drops in trial and you're not expecting it as an attorney, the absolute worst thing you could do would be to repeat it, right? Because then it really imprints on the jurors' minds. But the attorney was so stunned, he just couldn't help himself. And he said he felt like he had been poisoned. All right. And then he moved on. But why is that so bad? It's because the defense has been saying that Michael died because he was very sick. They believe part of the proof is that Michael had been in the hospital before in October and then again in November. And there was apparently one other time as well, the date I'm not as clear on. So all that going in and out of the hospital, they say, is proof that he was sick, not because Natalie poisoned him, but just because he was sick. And if he died of being sick, not because Natalie poisoned him, then the defense wins. Natalie is not a murderer. Natalie did not do this. But what if all those times he was sick were at least in November, October 31, and then he was hospitalized again in mid-November? What if all of those times were just poisonings because Natalie poisoned him more than once? What if this wasn't the first time? That could turn the entire defense argument on its head. And that's why what the witness had just said was so critically important, because it was really the only hint we had that maybe what had happened earlier was related to what happened later and could have been the defendant Natalie's fault. Otherwise, it had been a similar situation, but that was all moving in favor of the defense. And now for the first time, it was moving more in favor of the prosecution, or at least conceivably could be. Now, Jason did note for the jury that there were some differences between what happened in November and what happened the final time that Michael got sick in February. For example, in November, Michael never lost consciousness. He was talking, he was coherent, not coherent in the sense, but he was able to be understood. Jason said he doesn't really know exactly what landed him in the hospital in November. He doesn't know whether Michael had a seizure, but what we just heard is pretty different, because in February when he got sick, he wasn't responsive. He didn't talk to anyone after that initial fall on the floor. So the defense made some headway with a practical argument, though, that Jason had estimated that Michael weighed 200 pounds. And then the question was, well, if he was injected with poison in bed upstairs, a single person, just Natalie, would have to drag him downstairs all the way to the stairs and into the kitchen? There was an objection that it was speculative and it never fully got answered, but honestly, it didn't need to be, because the point had been made. Everyone could sort of imagine that would be very hard for Natalie to do, to bring him downstairs, drag him down the stairs when she's petite and he's 200 pounds. And Michael would probably have been pretty banged up, bruised up, would have been kind of noticeable if that had happened. So what is this about? What's this argument about? Well, the defense is arguing that if Natalie injected Michael with insulin, he wouldn't just suddenly keel over. He'd have 15 minutes or so to be outraged that she just injected him with some needle, to try to figure out what it was, to be upset with her, to call 911 to demand help because she wouldn't tell him what she had just injected him with. So the state asked a question yesterday to the effect of, well, okay, what if he was asleep or drugged? Maybe he didn't know he had been injected with insulin. And the defense is saying, well, what if it was true that it took 15 minutes, but the reason he had no idea he'd been injected was because it couldn't have. Let me rephrase that. The defense is saying it couldn't be while he was asleep upstairs because he was on the kitchen floor when everybody saw him. So he had to have made it downstairs. And they were assuming either he got injected right there and fell to the ground, or if it took 15 minutes, she would have had to drag him down there. But I do think there's a little bit of a gap in the argument because the defense also argued it was going to take 15 minutes for this to act. And so wouldn't it be possible for the state to be right that he was injected with insulin while asleep, woke up, and then came down and got in the kitchen, fell on the floor after it had been 15 minutes? So it seemed to me like it was possible, probably not super likely that he had been injected upstairs. One of the things that we have heard talked about by some of the witnesses is that Natalie may have normally given him his medication. So maybe she was used to injecting him with things, and maybe it wouldn't have surprised him if that's what she did. But I have so many questions left around this whole issue. Natalie sent out reports about Michael's blood sugar during the day, and those numbers were way different, like 5 times higher than what his blood sugar was when he got to the hospital. So I've wondered, how was she measuring that? Doesn't that require a stick? Those of you who know, I think you have to actually draw blood, right, for a test. And why would Natalie have such a tester, such a checker in her home if no one in her family had diabetes? She was a pharmacist, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a glucose monitor lying around your home. Why would you? And I also wonder, why did Natalie think she should check Michael's blood sugar? So it just seemed to me like that wouldn't be something people would normally do in a situation like this. Taking the blood pressure, taking the temperature, those things would be kind of more normal, but checking blood sugar seemed a little different. And I just wondered how she did it. And they haven't really gotten into any of those sort of practical points. Now, Jason did say he saw Natalie checking Michael's blood sugar. I'm not sure whether he meant on the day of the event. I assumed so, but I wasn't clear on that at the moment. So the defense also asked Jason about Michael being a bodybuilder. And Jason said, yeah, Michael really cared about his physique, his body. He liked feeling healthy, sort of implying that this wasn't taken to a crazy level that made no sense. Jason said he did not know if Michael took a lot of pills. He did take, and the defense lawyer got him to agree to all kinds of supplements to increase his vitality and physicality. He said he didn't know what those were. He didn't know how many he took. And Jason said, no, I never witnessed. The question was, did you ever witness Michael taking 30 to 35 pills at a time? And he said, no. But remember from what we talked about yesterday, that implants in the jury's mind the idea that maybe he took 30 to 35 pills at a time. Just this witness didn't happen to see it. But so far, we don't have any evidence that he did take that much. It may be coming. We just don't have that evidence yet in the trial. Now, Jason said Michael never talked about injecting something into his body, some kind of medicine, anything like that. And when it came to Cochran's 2 businesses that were implicated in the Ponzi scheme, Jason said that Michael said he would research the government contracts online and then send them to Natalie, and she would work on them and bid them. So let me go ahead and say thank you to JB Kidsco for the super chat. I appreciate it. And the other defense attorney acts like he does not want to be there. I just think he's a more understated attorney. They are so different. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. They have radically different styles, the 2 defense attorneys. So that's just, I think, the way they are. And Bama Queen has been a member for 11 months. That is awesome. Thank you, Bama Queen. I appreciate that. That's exactly how long we've had members. So she's been in since the beginning. Thank you, Bama Queen. All right. So this is what the prosecution is arguing. The prosecution is arguing that Michael really didn't know a lot about the Ponzi scheme because he didn't know a lot about the businesses. Natalie was running the whole business. That was the motive for her to kill him, was because he was finding out or about to find out about what she was doing. They were going to have this meeting with the Bank of America, and she had to prevent that meeting from happening because Michael was about to go read the riot act to Bank of America and say, how dare you not release our funds? And if you won't release our funds, then we're outraged about that. And there's no reason for that. And at that point, Michael was going to learn the truth. Now, there's a little question around that because they also put up someone who said this meeting at Bank of America wasn't about releasing funds. The meeting at Bank of America was about a private banking relationship, a special banking relationship, because they claim to be high net worth individuals. So there's a little bit of contradiction there. But basically, the prosecution idea is Michael, very little involved in the Ponzi scheme, and was about to find out. This is the motive. Natalie was in charge. But I do want to say that I don't really think that the argument that he just looked up contracts online that they could bid on and then pass those to Natalie, I'm really questioning that particular line of that particular argument. And here's kind of my thinking. It would be wildly different amounts of work for them. Because these contracts are online, you can go to websites that list them and you can search by various criteria and you could say, okay, these are the ones we'd be qualified for. I can see where that's could be a substantial amount of work. But when you compare that to everything else, it's not all that much, because after that, you would have to fill out all the paperwork. You'd have to get estimates on the cost of the product, manufacturing it. If that was how you were going to prepare the product, you'd have to figure out the amount you were going to bid. You'd have to prepare the proposal, negotiate it if there's an issue around that. And then you have to negotiate the contract itself if you are awarded it, to get the exact wording. You have to write out specs for the product as it's manufactured. You have to buy the product. You have to ship the product. You have to field complaints and questions about how to use it. So they both had quit their jobs. It just seems like that's really unfair for him to just be searching online and picking out a few items, and for her to be doing everything else. It seems unrealistic for them to be that different. And so I don't know about that argument that he was not involved at all. I'm not even sure they need to make that argument. I don't know why they have to go that far. I know they want a motive. I'm just not sure if they are picking the exact right one. So the witness did make a point that he only knew about the problems like brain swelling that Michael was having because Natalie kept telling him things. And the defense was kind of put out by that, finding it really hard to believe that Jason never asked his buddy Michael more questions, because they did hang out, were apparently buddies. Now, Jason did admit that Michael really did not want to go back to the hospital. Natalie had told multiple people that day while Michael was lying on the couch that, he don't want to go to the hospital. He'll be mad when he wakes up and he'll be very upset. So then we had our second and only witness for the day. And Nina, thank you very much. Nina is frustrated with the state. It has been, it's an interesting trial. So thank you, Nina, for your comment. I really appreciate that. So the second and only other witness was Joseph Stevens. He works currently at the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia. He's a chemist forensic examiner. He has worked for the FBI for 8 years. And before that, he worked for the Secret Service for 10 years. He's worked with insulin. He's been given competency tests on analyzing insulin, the chemistry of it. So he was tendered as an expert, and the defense did no voir dire, which is asking questions to see if the person's really an expert, did not object. And that was a very wise choice. Trying to get an expert excluded when they're from the FBI and Secret Service. They've been trained in this exact issue is really, really going to be difficult. So I thought that was a wise move. Just let it happen. It's clearly going to happen. So he told us that he received 4 vials, a box, 4 items, a box, and then 3 vials. And he was asked to analyze the unknown liquid inside each of those vials. And what he found was pretty interesting. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I haven't made it. Let's see. Okay, I'll stop that screen share and see if I can share another. Darn it. I didn't make it into a PDF. Here's what I'm going to do that really quick so we can talk about it. Because I know what happened. I may have even made it into a PDF, but I had to shut everything down to try to get the internet to work. Hotels and internets. So let's see if this will open up for you. I would love to just show it to you without having to turn it into a PDF, and it worked, I think. Yay. Okay. So I did this little chart to kind of show you what was in each of the vials, because this is just a little easier for me to keep it in my head, and I thought it'd be easier for you to see. So there were the 3 vials, and for each of them, he divided it into 2 exhibits. The vial with the liquid, and then he took the liquid out so that he could analyze it. The first vial had methyl prednisolone acetate. That's what the label said, and that's actually what was inside the vial. Same for vial number 3. It had Humalog insulin Lispro, and it really had that. It said that on the label, and it really had that inside the container. Now, for what those are, the first methyl prednisolone acetate. Now, I looked this up on the internet. I am no medical expert here, but it was a corticosteroid to relieve swelling and allergic reactions. So that's what the first one was. The third one, Humalog insulin Lispro, is for treating diabetes by controlling blood sugar levels. So that's its purpose. The most interesting by far was vial number 2, which was supposed to have one thing in it. It was labeled as one thing, but it had something entirely different inside it. Now, this hasn't been explained. We haven't taken that anywhere. I don't know if the prosecution is going to argue that there is some significance to that. So far, all we know is it's different. What it was labeled as was enclomiphene citrate. That would be for low testosterone in men or ovarian dysfunction in women, according to Chat GPT or whatever the AI for Google is. And then what it really had was glycerol and letrozole. Glycerol is just a solvent, a sweetener, lubricant. Letrozole, on the other hand, is for breast cancer for postmenopausal women. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Natalie and Natalie told lots of people that she did have cancer, but we at least heard, or in the transcript from the sentencing hearing for Natalie, there was a discussion by the judge about how she was faking cancer. This was just made up. She told everybody that, but it was really just to gain sympathy, and it was to convince them to let her out of things that they wanted her to do, or promises she made, like, oh, well, I'm really tired from radiation, chemo, it's been terrible. And so she was saying things like that, but didn't actually have cancer. So it hasn't really been explained in this trial yet. At this point, we have seen repeatedly in text messages and so forth where she said, I have cancer, and she's made statements like that, but we haven't really had it explained. I assume what was said in the federal court case was true, that she didn't really have it, but we'll have yet to find out a little bit more. So that is, I gave that to you as sort of a quick summary so you could see what it was. It took us quite some time to go through all of that. So the witness said that it is possible that one of the vials had been punctured and he couldn't really tell. So in other words, it didn't look to him like it had been, he couldn't tell anyway, it had been a tool, which would mean a needle. He couldn't really tell that. He talked about the defense lawyer in this point was the different defense lawyer. He had a much slower, less aggressive style than the other lawyer, who, by the way, was less aggressive today, I felt like. But essentially, it consisted, the cross-examination did, of trying to get the witness to support some of the defense points. That has worked very well with many of the other witnesses, but it did not work with this witness at all. For example, they were really hoping this witness would support their claim that you don't keel over right away if you get a shot of insulin, that it takes 15 minutes, it takes some time. But this witness kept saying, look, I'm a chemist. What I do is test substances. I figure out what they are. I don't know. I don't get into how long it would take to take effect in the human body. Ask a doctor, all of that. So some of the points that they made were that the vials were not collected until 4 to 5 months after the death of Michael Cochran. But again, this witness didn't really know that. They were trying to make that point with this witness. What he could say is that he did not test these vials until 2 years or so after Michael had died. It was a substantial length of time. Michael died in 2019 and he died, and he tested these in 2021. So the lawyer also tried to get him to talk about some details, like the fact that methylprednisolone was found in a cabinet in the corner of the house. The defense has been suggesting throughout and to numerous witnesses that maybe Michael had his own medicine cabinet with all his own personal medications, supplements, things like that he took that no one else had access to or went into. Now, that would suggest maybe Natalie had nothing to do with giving it to him. But the objection was sustained because the witness did not know where the drugs that he was given were found. He just was handed these and started to test them. And the lawyer also tried to ask him, well, if Natalie had inflammation of the lungs, would that be a proper use of one of these drugs? And he said, ask a doctor. And kept throughout, the objections were sustained because it really was outside his ability to testify to, outside the scope of what he had actually been brought in to testify about. There was a huge point that I thought they did make, which was that one drug. Remember the one that was different? There was one label and then a completely different drug inside that vial. That was found at a different place. They didn't explain what they were. The two that were exactly what they were supposed to be were found in the Cochran home. We found that out. But they gave us another address. Was it perhaps the office for their business? I don't know. But they gave us another address, and that was where that one that was different was found. The one that didn't match the label and the substance inside it. So was that at a second home, an office? Who had access to that? All questions that have not yet been answered within the trial. The defense was really frustrated that the witness wouldn't answer more. He had attached to his expert report articles that were sort of more generally about how insulin acts in the body. But he said he was just giving some general references, showing generically what insulin did, that he couldn't answer questions like how long it would take before it dropped you to the floor. Now, I did think it was kind of funny because if the other lawyer had the same witness, he would have immediately gotten up and said, now the sum total of your testimony is that you tested these vials, you tested this vial, and it had exactly what it said in it. And you tested this other vial, and it had exactly what it said in it. And you tested this third one, and they were different, but you don't know where it was found. It wasn't found in their home. You don't know how it got there, and you don't know if it had anything to do with Michael's death, right? And that would have been the testimony. It would have been a really different looking cross-examination because they did have such different styles. I think either can be effective, but with this particular witness, probably that style would have been more effective. He did this was a witness who was very committed to not moving outside his expertise. And so all the other techniques just didn't work with him. So one thing that I did think was a little odd was that the witness did not measure how much was inside the vials. I find that just bizarre. Why would he not do that? It seems like such an obvious thing. He took it out of the vial in order to test it, but he didn't measure how much was in there. He said, well, that's not part of our protocol. I wasn't asked to do that. So that isn't what I did. And the lawyer even said, well, why is that not part of your protocol? Why did you not do that? Which was the exact question I think everyone was wondering, but the judge said, well, the objection from the state was, well, that's outside the scope. And the judge said, yeah, it pretty much is, because why the FBI has his protocol isn't really part of his testimony. But I thought that was hugely problematic, because it just seems like even in getting measurements of things, he would want to know how much was there. I just find it incomprehensible that he didn't measure it. The reason that matters so much is that there's question about, was it a full vial of insulin? In which case, this had nothing to do with Michael's murder. Maybe one like it did, but not this one. If it was full, if it had no puncture in the top, if it had never been used, well, then it wasn't used to kill Michael. But on the other hand, if what happened was it was partially used, and you would think this would be obvious, right? I'm going to show you some more pictures. Let me share another screen. I'll stop that screen and share another one with you. Here we go. So they showed this vial, and there we go. Now, this vial, to me, I was like, well, that looks full to me. It looks to me like, I don't know if you can see my cursor. I think you can there. It's a mirror cursor, but okay, right there. It looks to me like that's full, right? Okay. I mean, I think it is. I think it looks full. But then they showed the vial from the side, and suddenly I'm like, wait a minute, is that half empty? I can still see the line at the top, but it looks like there's another line lower down. So I don't know. Was it full or not? And I am just absolutely gobsmacked that he didn't measure how much was in there, or even take a photograph where it was clear and obvious how much was in there. That really surprises me as much as it did the defense lawyer. I don't get it. So they also showed a photograph of the insulin vial in the refrigerator. Now, by my refrigerator standards, it was definitely not hidden. We had heard that it was hidden in the refrigerator, but not by my refrigerator cleanliness standards. It was in a basket on the refrigerator door, which I would call out in the open, but maybe I have a worse refrigerator than y'all do. So, and there was the witness was very clear that his testing was accurate, even if the vial was punctured. It was all fresh. It had the exact potency of fresh Humalog Lispro, which is the diabetes drug to regulate insulin. So he did acknowledge he had no way to know that the vial he was looking at was the exact one that was recovered 4 to 5 months after the death of Michael. He tested what they gave him. He didn't know whether it killed Michael, but obviously he could never have known that. He wasn't even asked, I don't think, whether he knew whether it killed Michael, but obviously he could not conceivably know that. He said he didn't know if it had been punctured or not. I'm running through my notes to make sure I covered everything with y'all. And again, I'm just shocked. I do not get that he did not measure the amount in there. That is really surprising to me. So at that point, we were through for the day. They had no additional witness. I'm not sure exactly what happened. The defense, though, asked for something really interesting. They said, we're having a slight problem with one of our experts, because this expert, we were wanting them to be able to be present, to actually listen while the state's expert on their subject testifies. Then they could help us deal with what we should ask that person. So they would help us on cross-examination of that person. That's the common thing that you would want your expert to be able to help you, because the expert understands, whereas you might not. So the lawyer may not be able to come up with just the right questions. Ideally, you can have learned all of that before you get to trial, but when you haven't been given a lot of discovery, that can be really difficult. So in this particular, I definitely understand them wanting the expert to help them. So the judge said, well, they could just watch it on court TV, right? And court TV, the guy who runs the video for court TV, who was super nice guy, and he was like, like, there you go. He can watch it on court TV. But the defense counsel said, well, we want them to be able to, we prefer to do it by phone. And that way she can talk to us and say, okay, ask this and ask that. So a phone or audio hookup. So they're going to be doing that. So that tells us a couple things. We've got at least some experts, one or more for the defense, and that we have more to hear from the state. The defense tried once again to exclude that vial of insulin. The court said the court will continue to deny all of those motions. So that was not something that they were able to successfully get. The evidence is light in the case. That is one of the things that the defense is talking about and is showing. So I am, let me answer a few questions over here. I'll also answer some questions from the chat. If you would put question marks at the beginning of your question, it will help me spot yours in the chat. So, and I also have some pictures to show you from around West Virginia. I also ate at Tudor's Biscuit World today. I'd heard about that, and may I say, fully deserved all the recommendations that I got for it. Amazing biscuits. When you pull up in the drive-thru, they say, would you like a biscuit or bread? I'm like, what, do I look crazy? I just came to Tudor's Biscuit World. I'm not getting bread. I am getting a biscuit. And so it was great. Loved it. Okay, so Brandon is saying that letrozole is also used illicitly by bodybuilders in conjunction with peptides and steroids to block estrogen and potentiate testosterone. Interesting. Okay. I assume that the defense is going to have some experts to talk about stuff like that. That's really interesting. I don't know anything about those and how they might be used. So thank you for that. And we will hope to find out more. Marvin's mom says, I speculate he used steroids for muscle building and his wife gave him that injection regularly. That's how he let her inject him. And then she put insulin in the injection to kill him that time. I think it's possible that that is an argument that the prosecution could have made, that it was very, it was something that was customary, that it didn't surprise him at all that she did this. And so, yeah, I think it's possible. I think we'll see. I don't know whether anyone will make that argument, but I do think that that's possible. Brandon saying you can purchase more on all the things you can purchase. You're really challenging me here. I'm reading these. Anastrozole, letrozole, peptides, and steroids online legally as research chemicals shipped right to your door. Many bodybuilders do this, and this can lead to cardiomyopathies. So, wow, okay. And there was tons of talk about all the supplements he took. I think the jury will have to wrestle with that. It's going to be significant. Chico, Karen loves this case. I am so glad. I'm so glad. Thank you all for watching this. I really appreciate it. Let me ask one thing too. I always forget. Would you hit the like button and would you subscribe to come back for more? We would love to have you back. And one last thing I normally don't ask, but if you would send this out to other people, thus far the case has not really gotten the attention that I think it deserves. Fascinating case, important case, lots of important issues. And if you would send that out to a couple of people you think would be interested, that would be awesome. KS has gifted 5 lawyerly memberships just in time for, let's go ahead and talk about our members only event. Today, I had the opportunity to interview the reporter for the local news station I mentioned earlier, Jessica, and talk to her about some of the early things when she first learned about the case, because she was on the case in 2019 as a reporter for a local newspaper. She's since shifted over to the television side. So it was a great interview. What I'm going to do is drop that for members only on Sunday. And then on Monday morning, I'm going to open that up for everyone. But it'll be available for members only early on Sunday night. So I will look forward to that. And then, so that will be our members only event. Looking forward to that. And we will go live per regular on Monday night. It's a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day for those of us in the United States. But and we won't have court. But I'm going to go ahead and go into some of the issues that I've been talking about earlier related to that hearing at the sentencing for the federal case, because I thought there was some really important information in that and wanted to go over that with you. So thank you so much, KS, for gifting 5 Lawyer Lee memberships. If you can join by hitting the join button right beside where it says Lawyer Lee, or if you are on your iPhone and you don't see a join button, you can go to Safari browser, open up YouTube. That way, go on your computer and you'll be able to join, no problem. Okay, so let's head over and see what questions people had. I am going to look. I got to back up a little ways. Ooh. Okay, so I am. Okay, I think that's about it. I'm going to go that far back and we'll see. So Green Bay wanted to. Green Bay asked, why does the defendant go up at sidebar? It's something the judge requests. I've actually heard him say, will the defendant and the attorneys come up? I don't know if it's this judge, if it's all of West Virginia. I don't know. I've never seen it before, but it's very unique. It's different from what I have understood. Okay, Joy asking me, is it common for the defendant to go to sidebar? I've never seen it before. It was new to me. Okay, there's Mama Pinks telling everybody to put your question marks at the beginning. That really does help me. Beth, did I get called out from the judge while he was giving the jury instructions for the weekend? We have social media interests. I didn't hear that. I was sitting there. I didn't hear anything. And by called out, I just mean, did you get mentioned, right? I think of called out as, did you get in trouble with the judge? Wow, I really hope not for that. But as far as I didn't hear him mention it, but that would be really great. I'm going to have to go back and listen. Maybe it was something I couldn't hear. How is the jury reacting? Says, just be nice. I am not seeing, well, first of all, I'm trying to watch 20 things at once and take notes. So I'm more focused on some of the other things than just straight on the jury. And where I'm sitting, not so easy to see them. I haven't seen really strong reactions, but I have seen everybody being really attentive and paying attention to everything that's been said. Big Dog, the defense lawyers, I didn't know this before, the defense lawyers are appointed. There was a letter from Natalie saying she could not afford them. That would probably make sense since her assets were forfeited as part of the federal investigation. At least maybe some of the state investigation too, but I don't think she would have anything left. And so the defense lawyers have been appointed. What was explained to me by one of the local reporters is that in a capital case, you get 2 attorneys. And so that's why she is allowed 2 attorneys. So that was something I've been wondering about too. So Verified Vegan had the exact same question. Keith, is she still in jail for the crime she was charged guilty of? And Keith, the answer is yes. She's in federal prison and she pled guilty to 2 counts that were related to that Ponzi scheme. And she is in prison for 11 years and 3 months for that. Under federal sentencing procedure, that would normally be she'll serve 85% of that. She started her sentence, I think I looked it up and it was like 22, something like that. So she's been in prison for a couple of years. Bama Queen wants to know, who is the man who rolls around to talk with the defense lawyers? And if you mean the man who sits right behind the defense lawyers, I understand he's an investigator. I haven't yet introduced myself to all of the attorneys, but I do need to do that. Jillius wanting to know, why does she go up the sidebars? He invites her. The judge says, come on up. So I guess it's normal. Oh, interesting. Jen Kestrel says, was wondering, should the chemist have been wearing gloves handling the vials during his testimony? Interesting question. There was a question to him about, well, were there fingerprints on them? And he said, well, I'm not in charge of fingerprints. That went to somebody else. Probably wouldn't matter in that if there was testing, it was already done. Plus, when you think about it, after the vials have been in the refrigerator for 4 months. I mean, I would think everybody's been in that refrigerator. There's no telling how many fingerprints would be on that. So, but he didn't have gloves. So that is an interesting point. Typically, that would be something a lot of prosecutors would want, just to be really careful. Some nobody asked me if there are any lesser charges, like could she be found guilty of neglect or something for not giving him aid or taking him to the hospital? That is just a brilliant question, some nobody. I need to find that out. I don't know the answer. That is a great, great question. Irish Amy, do you think that, and I think the answer is no, but I want to make sure before I just say that. Irish Amy, do you think the defense attorney's different approaches is a tactic, kind of a good cop, bad cop thing? And thank you for your nice comment too, Irish Amy. I think they're just different people, and I think they just have different styles. I don't think that they intentionally say, I'm going to do it this way, you do it that way, we'll be able to persuade the jury that way. I just think that's how it is. That's how they are and who they are. All right, let's see. Denise asked me, what do you about the defendant going up to sidebars? Everyone noticed that, and it is very unique and different. Sorry, I had this hair that's driving me insane. Okay, Free Spirit Christina asks, how was the defense team able to exclude the Humalog insulin bottle? It seems so relevant. I think it did come in because they asked specifically, let's keep this whole insulin thing out. And the court said, no, I've ruled before. I'm over that. I'm denying that, and I'm still denying that, and I'm going to continue to deny that. The judges made the decision that is coming in. I do understand their point. It was so far removed, and there's so little proof. Can't even, they need a lot more. I assume people are going to come to say, whatever officers, whoever was sent out will come and say, I took out the vial, I found it here, I photographed it, this is how much it had in it, that sort of thing. We do need that. I think that needs to be presented. All right. Hey, Mona asking, doesn't it seem like a weak prosecutorial case so far? I think it's very light on evidence. This is very much a circumstantial case. The prosecutor leaned right into that in opening, and he said, look, I'm not bringing fingerprints and DNA. I'm not bringing anything like that. This is a circumstantial case, but circumstantial is good enough. And under the law, you can convict her on that. So that's what I think he's going for. Was his blood sugar 21? Pinky asks. And I need to say thank you to Pinky. I assume this is the same Pinky who sent me. Have you noticed we don't have like that crazy circle that I have banished the offensive ring light? And she sent me some stuff on how to maybe fix my lighting, and I redid things, and I think it's a lot better. At least I don't have that big ring on either side of my glasses. So thank you. That was Jeannie Pinky who sent that. So I assume this is the same Pinky who's asking a question. And yes, that's what I understood. And it really made no sense because she was testing his blood sugar throughout the day and it was fine. It was like 100. And suddenly he goes to the hospital, it's 21. Wow. I would like to know, if you put all her text messages together, what was the last time she wrote somebody and said, this is what his blood sugar was? And if it was 100, is it conceivable for it to drop to 21 in the course of however many hours it was? I just would be interested in that. And maybe we'll find that out. That may well be to come. Overstem for sure says, would you recommend a local going to check out the trial? I can't decide if I should go. Well, you can always watch it on court TV. So that is a real advantage of something like this particular one. You don't have to go. You don't have to be in person. You can just sit in the comfort of your home and watch it. And that's a huge advantage, and something I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to somebody like Court TV who will come and televise it, and we'll do that because it enables it to be public. So you don't have to. Obviously, I enjoy going to the trials. And so that's what I'm doing. So I guess it's a little hard to answer that for you. I really enjoy it and have learned a lot. So Verified Vegan, were the jurors sleeping during cross? The defense lawyer speaks on half speed. So I didn't see anybody sleeping, but I wasn't, vigilantly watching for that. He definitely was slow. It was fortunate because it was in the morning. If it had been after lunch, maybe, tougher for everybody. It's always easier for jurors and anyone to fall asleep after lunch. Nina Stanek, what was the other liquid which wasn't consistent? So it was labeled in clomiphene citrate, and inside it were glycerol and letrozole. So, and if you back up, I put up a chart to show you what the drugs were. So back up a little bit and you will see that chart. In fact, well, no, that's fine. Okay, so, Chicken Tender is asking people to hit the like button. I would really appreciate that. That would be great. It would help the video get out to more people. Baby Renee, in 2020 Fedwire fraud trial, when Michael's parents testified, did either say exactly when they learned they would lose their own savings and house, or was this about to be exposed? So what they said at that point, and that's one of the things I'm going to go over in the video Monday night. I'm going to go over what the mother said. She's not going to testify at this trial, and I'll tell you why I think that's a loss when we covered this on Monday. But one of the things she said was that they had no idea about any of this until the Fed showed up at their house and started telling them that, hey, this is a Ponzi scheme and your son may have been murdered. That all of this kind of happened at once. They were just hit with all this. They were, in fact, about to sign a contract with Natalie, and all of this was about to happen. You'll hear all of that on Monday night. So be sure to hit the notifications on your subscription to the channel so that you get notice of that. But if you just want to remember, it's at 7 p.m. Monday night. You can always watch it after it loads on video, but would love to have you live. Alpha Fox Adam is saying the contractor said that Mike didn't want to go to Raleigh General Hospital. They did say that. That's true. It's horrible. Jurors there get it. Oh, interesting. Okay. So they did talk about General Hospital. I didn't even hear that it was Raleigh General, but that made more sense. I thought that was such a strange name for hospital, just General Hospital. It's like the show on TV. But so that's interesting. You're saying he was saying, I don't want to be taken there, as if it to distinguish that from others. There were numerous witnesses, though, who said in general he didn't want to go to the hospital. So I think that the jury will probably likely conclude, yeah, okay, he didn't want to go to the hospital. Now that's different from nobody takes him when he desperately needs it. After all, he asked for a ride in November. And so when his friend took him, he wanted to go. So you can kind of assume that when it got bad enough, he would really be interested in going. Let me head back over here. Bone Mama. Oh, well, thank you. Celebrating Lee's fabulous hair. Thank you. I appreciate that, Bone Mama. Thank you very much. And Coles is, thank you. Another nice message. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you. Okay, wasn't there a hospice nurse that testified today, Bud BS? That was yesterday. And you can watch, I'm covering the trial day by day. So you can watch yesterday's video. I go live every night at 7-ish p.m., depending on how late the court goes. And so you can watch that back and you can hear all about the hospice nurse who testified yesterday and what she had to say. This is a good point. Beth Hammer says, can you see the judge calling Sarah Boone up to sidebar? So I don't know about Sarah Boone in particular, but the one that ran through my mind, remember the defendant who launched himself across literally leapt up over the bench and like grabbed the judge and they pulled him off. Huge video. Viral video. I thought, imagine inviting some defendants up. You would be afraid as a judge. So I wondered if there's some discretion about it, like some defendants get invited up and others definitely not. I kind of wondered about that. Nene Love asks, have I ever heard of steroid-induced diabetes? No, I haven't. I don't know. I don't know a lot about diabetes, and so I'll probably learn more through this. I've really appreciated the people who have written me and given me more information. Thank you for that. TXRN asking about someone sitting behind the defendant who asked not to be mentioned or to be involved. So I won't say anything more than that, but I understand the question. Some nobody just has questions. Free Spirit Christina, how is it if okay, so we've already answered that. I think the insulin bottle is coming in. Some nobody, are there lesser? Okay. Did I maybe go back up to the top? And I think I've answered most of these. Somehow they seem to be repeating. I probably accidentally went further up. That is probably what happened. Let me move down a little bit. And I really have enjoyed all the comments people have sent about areas of law or areas of medicine that they know something about. So I always appreciate that. Rosie says, seems to draw some similarities with Tammy Daybell, with the spouse thinking, oh, they have some medical issues. I could pass this off as natural death. It really reminds me of several cases, including the Corey Richens case, because of the issue about whether or not the spouse poisoned the other spouse and all of that. And kind of the very, very circumstantial evidence without a lot of physical evidence to support it. Was Michael, when Michael was excused, what did they find? Ruthlin says, when Michael was excused. I'm not sure what you're asking me. Maybe I'll rephrase that. And sometimes as I'm reading through it, it's maybe totally obvious to everybody else, but when you're reading it and you're trying to talk at the same time, it's not always that easy. Free Spirit Christina says, to drop that low, it seems suspicious. It seems suspicious and fast. That is really, really low, because before he was in the normal range at 100. I think that's what they said in opening. I think I'm remembering my numbers correctly. So but there will be some experts next week who will give us those details. It'll be great to learn that. Sharon Stacy asks, is there plenty of seating? No, there is some seating. There are still some seats left, but it is a tiny courtroom. It is very, very small. So there is not a lot of seating. Amy wants to know, how did she come under suspicion for this crime? Was it because of the financial crimes, or did a friend contact the police? So I believe, yes, and you will learn more about that on the video that I'm going to drop Sunday night as a members first, and then it will be available to everybody on Monday morning. So that video will talk about how exactly the case broke, and it sort of broke with, believe it or not, the baseball fraud. It turns out it may be football instead of baseball. Little League, anyway. We'll just say Little League. All right. Wendy Hook asking me, what drugs were in his body when he got to the hospital? Don't they know? They really don't know a lot of information. That's what I gather. We haven't had the witnesses come yet, but they did test his insulin and found, upon autopsy, and found it to be really low. But I'm very confused about that, because we don't have the evidence in yet. We don't have the medical evidence from the hospital. We don't have the evidence from the autopsy. So we will just have to find more of that out. Anna wants to know about guilty or not. I usually, Anna, try to hold off on that so that people can form their own opinion. So what I try to do is just present what happened at trial, and then people can make their own opinions. I call some balls and strikes, but I try not to express an opinion on the actual case. All right. So CJ asking me, if she's guilty, are you ever surprised by people's short-sightedness about getting caught? Always, always surprised by that. Yes, always. At least I don't have to get up at 4 a.m., says Anna. Yes, that is a huge, huge relief. Yes, it is. All right. Angie asking, have you made it to Tamarack? No, and I really am looking for that. So, in fact, let me go ahead. I want to, it says, do I want to leave the studio? No, I do not. I'm going to add these to the stage because I want to show you some pictures, because we got out of court early. My dad, who's with me, and I drove around and saw some of West Virginia. We went over to the newish national park here. I mean, look at this place. It's crazy beautiful, huh? That's ice coming off some rocks right beside the road. It's really beautiful. Huge things of ice. And that's a babbling brook you see there running through the snow. Just absolutely gorgeous. So I just wanted to celebrate West Virginia because it's a beautiful place. Almost heaven, as several people have pointed out to me. And as the song says, it is really, really pretty. So I will look forward to the members only event will be Sunday night, and I'll look forward to seeing absolutely all of you, everybody else, on Monday night at 7 p.m. Really looking forward to it. See you then.